Right on time, 8 p.m. Central Daylight Time here at Folk You Zeus. Um, Considering the topic today being lead by example, that's the first thing. You got to be punctual. Damn it! If you're a leader, if you say 8 o'clock, you be there at 8 o'clock. And maybe one of the qualities of good leadership would be one that would be one of them. Okay, depending on the situation. This is going to be somewhat of a philosophical discussion. Obviously, this channel is geared towards speaking about issues, strategies within the arts in general. I'm a musician, if you don't know that. So I'll bring in a lot of that, but also talk about visual arts and theater and all the other arts that are applied arts and all that. So, but we're talking the subject being lead by example, and we'll start right into it. And uh, some would say that there are two kinds of people: leaders and followers, which kind of suggests that there is this division. Either you're a leader or either you're a follower. And I think that's what's implied by people that come up with that saying. You're either a leader or follower. There's two kinds of people, only two kinds of people. I'd argue that that is incorrect or rarely correct. And I'll give you some examples of cite some other quotes in that as we go along. And the one question I had, well, are you born to be a leader? It's that nurture nature thing too. It's like, um, you know, if you're a son of a general that led troops in World War II or wherever, um, well respected, are you supposed to be that? Is that something in hereditary in that? So that could be one example. Are you born to be, or do you learn to become a leader? Can everybody learn to become a leader, or is it just it's in your genes to get to the point? Anything you learn is somewhat, there's some heredity involved. Some traits are hereditary, and some are nurtured and learned. So whatever it is in the leadership role that you have, I wouldn't disqualify yourself from becoming a leader if you don't feel that you're fitting in that groove. There are times you lead and times you follow, and that's going to be the argument that I'm going to come from. Um, Going back, I said this is going to be philosophical. Aristotle. Here's a quote from Aristotle. He says, "He who can't be a good follower cannot be a good leader." Okay, seems simple, but it's that term has been quoted over and over through and said in a lot of different ways through the years. And quote from Patton and this and that, and to that point of being, in order for you to understand what leadership really is, you have to understand what it is to follow leadership. So that's where we're going to go here too as well. So that Aristotle quote again, once again, he who can't be a good follower cannot be a good leader. Okay, another one. Here's another one for you. This is Napoleon. Napoleon, whether you like him or not, those soldiers who are not willing to be a general are not good soldiers. Okay, there's, you want to argue that or not, but that's a quote from Napoleon. I don't know if it's directly from Napoleon. I looked it up and qualified it. There's a few different sources that say that that's what Napoleon said. Those soldiers who are not willing to be a general are not good soldiers. That's twisting it around a little bit and said, okay, well, you got to be first, and that's the idea of, in order to get to be a general, you have to first be a soldier. You have to be a follower. Okay, you have to understand to follow. If you're a general and you can't follow directions, you can't follow orders, you can't, you're not disciplined. Okay, you don't have a direction. You don't have a focus. Those are qualities of that. I'd argue, and a lot of people argue, are qualities of leadership, that you have to have all those. But in order to develop all those, you have to be understand, and that's that nurturing point, to where you nurture yourself to become a leader, to become a leader in your community, in your whatever it's your artistic community or your just in community in general, politics and anything you want to go for sports. Okay, leadership in any walk of life. You need to have those qualities, and we won't talk specifically about all the. I don't want to go into communication, organizational theory, and leadership within those respects because that'd get real boring real quick. But I'm just bring up some points here and to kind of get to it as we go here. Um, yeah, so a couple of quotes to get us started here. One point I'll make is there are times to understand one's role. So when we're choosing to be a leader, um, we got to understand if is that our role? Is that what it's going to take to make the group succeed or to make the community succeed? Is it my time? Sometimes it's not your place. Sometimes too many cooks spoil the broth, as they say. So you have to find your role. Find your role. It might be that leadership role, and I'd argue that there's in communities there's never just one leader, and there are different, and we'll get into it with leadership styles and all that too. So to define your role within the community as you're developing your skills to become leadership. When is your time to take it? If you're not up to it, it's okay to just say, well, that's not my place. Sometimes you're forced into it. Sometimes somebody's got to take the lead. And so the more we prepare to become leaders in this world, the better um, and like I said, going back to it and saying, okay, in order to take on that leadership, you have to understand how to follow and understand where what it takes to be what you demand from either demand or expect from those who are following in order to be successful, whether it be in the arts, like I said, arts, sports, whatever, politics, whatever. This is a wide open cultural exploration of leadership here that I'm going for. Um, so yeah, so you want to understand your role and understand the setting that you're in. Okay, and I'll bring up some more concrete stuff here. I'm a musician. I'm in a band. I'm in a couple different bands. I have different roles in those two different bands. One leader. I'm the leader of the band. I'm the front and the leader, and it's my job to make sure the musicians are together and keeping it together. Sometimes the band is more successful. Usually when the band's more successful is when it's more together. There are more people contributing. Other times, in order to keep that band together, you have to step front and take some roles and give people, hey, this is the part I want you to play. It's like, okay, we're in a rehearsal, and all of a sudden the guitar player in the band, let's just in a generic sense, uh, didn't really learn the part that he was supposed to play, or didn't come up with a part that is required. It's an original song. He said, here's the chords, here's the stuff. Take it home, mess with it, and maybe give him a rough tape of it, him or her. And so, then okay, so you're in a rehearsal. It's your job as a leader to understand what the parts are. Like in sports, if you are the defensive coordinator, you don't just understand like what the linebackers are doing or what the front three or four, depending on the defense you're in, and or the defensive backs or whatever like that. You might have an expertise, but if you're going to take on that role, you're going to have to understand where everybody's supposed to be at every time and whatever. So as a band leader, that's something that I you hope that everybody contributes because everybody's a professional on that level to at least to a certain degree. There's some professionalism involved, and it's like, okay, you're in charge of your part, you're in charge of your part, you're in charge of your part. As a leader, you have to know what those parts to be a good leader. There's some more laissez-faire, and we'll get into that. That's more leadership style as we go, and that'll be the next thing we'll tackle. But in a band situation, or even in a studio situation, if I'm recording, let's say if I'm producing a piece of music, I have to understand, well, this is the instrumentation we need, so I have to make sure that these musicians show up for this session and that to coordinate it all. So there's leadership roles in a different sense. It's like, okay, there's different, when you call a rehearsal with a band that you have the same five guys, boom, there are four people or whatever, everybody shows up to rehearsal, you rehearse, and you understand what needs to have happen. And sometimes you butt heads, and that's part of leadership. It's that sometimes they say the leader of it's tough being on top. You're the loneliest man in the world sometimes when you're like the leader of an organization or something. So I mean, it's kind of like, because you have to control the vision, and you have to understand what needs to have happen. And sometimes you butt a lot of heads. Maybe you lose a friend over it or stuff if it gets real intense. So and you hear stories about that in various bands that break up and stuff, because there's this kind of friction that people have, and friction is not necessarily a bad thing. To fight, or to have a confrontation about which direction you want your art to go, and what's happening, and what parts need to be played, and how did, if you're in theater, how to address that line, just to take the same line, and just how are you going to, what mood are you going to capture, and that just the little finities that you use to advance the art. So I mean, that happens in, like, and that was the next thing I was bringing up, like a stage ensemble. um, right, obviously blocking, you have to understand where you're supposed to, where you're supposed to be at what time, and all that. And you have a director, yes, have a director, and that director is not actually usually not part of the play, sometimes it happens, um, part of the theater production, as far as the actors, not actors. And so you're directing these people to be in the right place, the right time, say the right thing at the right time in the right way, and sing in tune, whatever it is, if it's a musical or whatever. So, uh, to understand the leadership. But like I said, the followers are the people that are taking the instructions from either that producer in the studio, that director for the stage production, for the band leader. Okay. In the visual arts, there are times when you have a certain event that's taking place, and there's artists that are involved in a community, that you have a show or something like that. Obviously, it's not in the usually not in the creation of the arts. There's collaborative visual arts as well, and like I said, I like still want to have, eventually, when we start having I'll have guests on in discussion. I want to make sure I get involved more with the visual arts. Um, so yeah, going from there, go to leadership. Now we're talking leadership style. Now within all of those different communities or different organizations or ensembles, there's ways to handle those leadership roles. And the first one I'll throw out there is laissez faire. Laissez faire. It's like, I am okay. Everybody's going to enter their parts. It's going to be kind of like that. It's like, okay, maybe one day I'll be the leader, because it's moving in that direction to where, uh, I'm kind of knowing best about how this is moving. A lot of times, if you have two songwriters in a band, the one of Lennon and McCartney, like, take that. Okay, Lennon and McCartney. When Lennon came up with the song, they have their names on all these songs together. But most musicians, if you've followed, and I'm not a huge Beatle fan, and people will attest to that. They know great songs. They wrote great songs, but in general, I'm sure when they went into rehearsal, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that when it was Lennon's song, he brought it in and he says, "Okay, here's what I'm hearing. This is what I want." McCartney brings in his stuff, or Harrison brings in his stuff. So, especially when you have multiple, it's more of a kind of like, well, okay, here's what I'm kind of hearing. Um, Play your parts. Let's do it. So it's a little more open. There's not that one clear cut leader of the band, or leader of the organization, or in a lot of theater ensembles, improv stuff like that. There'll be, a lot of these actors will get together, and there's not necessarily a director out there that's telling them exactly how to, because it's all improv and that. There's somebody might, hey, I got this idea, let's do this. So there'll be a lot of, that'd be more laissez-faire, and it's just like allow leadership to swing from one individual to the next, one artist to the next, and do that way. The next one would be uh, democratic, and most people we use that term a lot, and a lot of times democracy is not democracy, and I don't want to get too political, but as, and not from a political, but just in general, the general term of a democratic run organization is there is some sort of a, you want to reach some sort of a consensus meaning everybody agrees, or the majority. Democratic usually uses a majority, or you define something that democratically, this is how we're going to work it democratically, we're going to do, okay, if more than half or whatever, or at least half or whatever, however he says, then we're gonna take that advice. We're gonna introduce that. Like we want a new band member, sax player. Should we get a sax player? You sit down with the band and they says, okay, I know I got this friend. He's a sax player. What do you think, guys? And I said, well, let's take a vote. We got five so far. So, okay, three decide, yeah, we want the sax. Two says no. And it's like, okay, well, we're a democracy. We're a democracy band. So we're going to do it the sax player. Bring him in. Bring her in. And these are ways to make decisions within these groups. And normally, depending on the type of group that it is, there are, like I said, for musical groups like that, it could be any way. It goes everywhere from laissez-faire to this democratic mode that I'm discussing now, to the next one, which is autocratic or authoritarian, which sounds pretty, like ugly. It's like, no, we don't want the one. But a lot of times that's the best way to, and most of the time you'll have, let's say, as a singer songwriter, um, if we're doing my material, if it's all my material, or I'm deciding, I'm the front person, I'm deciding on that, I'm deciding on the arrangements, I'm making these decisions. So in the end, and as a good leader, you don't just disregard input and advice from those within the group. And actually, those you can extend that to people outside the group as well. You have peers, you have people that you respect in your field, that you would take some advice, or at least hear them and to listen. And that's another point I'll get into here as we progress. Is so it works well to have an authoritative leadership in bands, or obviously for theater productions. You got a really strong director that knows exactly what needs, especially when you're doing like classics, and that if you're doing that, it's pretty well defined as to how these characters should come out. And you as a director, studied this and understand. And like I said, what all the pieces are supposed to go. You're that defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. You know what every player is supposed to be doing at what time, and how you want that play to proceed. So in a lot of different respects, that when you have that one person that knows what should be happening, it's a lot easier to evaluate. So if things do go awry a little bit, you know where to fix it, where the problems are. Right? And the followers, the people that are following, understand that, and you have to earn that respect as an authoritative leader from the people that are following you. Okay, so going back to leaders and followers. And there are times, like I said, that the followers will take leadership. And eventually, even in a band situation, you see it all the time. A band, you know, take going way back. What was the name of that band? Um, Peter Gabriel and Genesis. Okay, Peter Gabriel, Genesis. He left the band, and from what I understand, it was much more of a democratic band in a way, but you could tell it. I mean, he was the front man. He brought in the creativity and the theatrics that were involved in that band. If you want to look into Genesis, as early Genesis, when Peter Gabriel fronted the band, uh, um, it eventually evolved into a different band when he had left. So when he decided that he wanted to leave, because it's like, so now it was somebody else's turn to step up front. And I would imagine what did happen is that band became much more democratic when Peter Gabriel left. So, and there's I've looked a little bit into their history as a band. I was somewhat of a fan, and I'm just being a musician and being uh, growing up in the 70s, 80s, and that era. I knew about the bands from the 60s and stuff. I was closer to it, and you heard more about it as you found out. But just as one example, one broad example of somebody. Now it's time for Phil Collins to step up. Okay, he's going to come up front, and then they all wrote, and but he became the main writer. It was Peter Gabriel was the main force writer in that band. That came up, but as musicians, they all contributed, and like I said, it was probably much more democratic as they progressed. Um, so I mean, you choose it. Sometimes it just evolves. And in that case, I don't know. I wasn't in under meetings to say, okay, now we're going to be more democratic about these things. Peter's gone, so I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there, and to show the differences here. Laissez-faire, democratic, authoritative. All right. Next subject is talking about building community. Um, Building leadership skills and leaders. Um, as I alluded to earlier, communities don't always and actually often do not have just one leader. There are many leaders, times for different people to step up and saying, there are times when maybe the leader, the focus. Um, I was just give you a personal example. I founded an organization back in Chicago, Chicago Songwriters Collective. Um, it kind of evolved from I was hosting a songwriter showcase at a place called the Clearwater Saloon. And we do it every Thursday. I think it was Thursday. I can't, well, maybe it was Tuesday. I can't remember. I was hosting an open mic there as well, blah, blah, blah. But bottom line is, eventually, when these people started coming together, we started talking about doing other events. We did some workshops, this and that. So we established an official kind of organization. We got a website, Chicago Songwriters Collective website. We had official workshops. We planted plant pamphlets. We had guest speakers that were, major musicians and industry people in the Chicago area. So that was, something that, okay, found it. I was a leader of it. Um, but within that structure, as we started, people came up with some ideas and they took leadership in different areas. We started doing like little committees of, we want to, let's do more charitable events. And people says, yeah, let's do it. We can start doing some events and that, donating some money and workshops. And so you had these different areas. We had what we called the Song Fest in Houston. Somebody's doing a song fest now. Whatever's, I guess it's some generic term or whatever, but we called it that. And everybody show up, and everybody would play. Everybody in the organization would have whatever. And we do it like over 2 days. There was a lot of people involved here. But anyway, so eventually I moved to Texas here, and I was no longer in Chicago, so I kind of knew, hey, somebody's got to take on what I've been doing. So we moved on to the next person and left that, and they decided to take it into the same direction and do that. And eventually it morphed into something different than it started out to be. Um, but it still is going. It has its lulls, like any organization might have, any band. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a leader of a band, but sometimes the band is like, okay, they got to get a new guy for this. We got to. I just found a drummer for our gig for next Friday because the regular guy I had been using, he had to do something else. So it's like, so there sometimes it's real solid. You're moving ahead, you're doing the great gigs, and you got things, got enough of work, so everybody's happy to get a few bucks in their pocket and whatever. So and on that level, in that organization where it's about creating, but also you're putting in the time and you're pros and you want to make a little money, so that you want some return. Um, a songwriter collective was both a networking, and I say mostly a networking and a community service. We did a lot of little showcases and senior homes, different environments were that too. So we did that, and we showcased our music for ourselves and whatever. But in general, that when I left it, somebody else took it over, kept that going. Okay, we're talking. I started it in early '90s. Okay, I left in 2000. Okay, now it's 2023. It's still going. It has the Facebook is kind of like now it's home. We used to have a website, a pretty good website, and we had a lot of interaction on the website. Now it's kind of going to there's a Facebook page, and everybody lists what's going on, and they're still doing like song swaps and get-togethers and that. And I try to follow it on my end, and because I'm down in Houston now, but I'm in Chicago much. Hopefully, one day I'll be able to show up to some of the events when they schedule. But it's something that I started, but it's evolved into something a little different. But they're still going and they're still doing it. Like I said, it happens with bands, happens with football leagues. You look at the National Football League from where it started to where it developed and how it's come and the leadership as it went on. So I mean, I'm talking more to the arts, but the organizations are very similar in once you start to choose your style, your leadership style, the roles that each of the members of this community are taking on. Is it a huge organization where this has different chapters and that? So, and that could get even with bands. When I used to work with the Ken Arlen Orchestra, um, I was the sound engineer. And I had my crew. So I had like two or three, a rotating. We had one regular guy, and if I needed a third, I had a regular third guy. Then we sometimes need some helpers. Sometimes I only need one guy, whatever it is. So I mean, there was a pecking order for the people that we used on that crew, and so I was head of that crew for a while. And then he actually had an organization where he was the main band, and he would do everything from a jazz trio to a 5-piece band to an 8-piece band to a 12-piece and strings, extended horn section. Maybe they'd only have on some of these gigs 2 singers, but then there'd be 4 singers if on some, that. And then eventually he developed to where he started to get a lot of gigs, and he started a few other bands that were under his umbrella, under that Ken Arlen umbrella. So that's another way within that community, and he was great at doing every cover song you could think of. He had the greatest musicians in town. They can all read. They all played great. They were all very professional people and very tight organization. So on those levels, it's kind of like, yes, there's art involved, but there's a hell of a lot of organization and discipline and all that and the leadership. But you have to, if you try to take on something like that and be like the total authoritative leader, and it's an easy um, um, what would you call it, temptation to want to control everything. Sometimes you have to control everything. Sometimes you understand that that's you know, the recent album I did, you know, I produced it. I engineered, you know, 80%. You know, my buddy in Chicago, Craig, we did tracks there and different, some people there. And then he took some leadership there when we needed it. But it all kind of came back here. So, I mean, I'm the one that made all the final decisions and played most of the stuff and did that and wrote all the songs except for one. And so, you know, it does come a time where it's like I'm not sitting back saying, "Well, gee, I'm going to wait for somebody else to figure this out," or well, you know, it's like, okay, maybe I should go. Maybe, you know. So sometimes you have to take the reins and say, "Yeah, I'm going to do this project, and you know, it's going to be great." It's going to, so there's confidence involved too with leadership. So you know, but you know, even in that respect, I was building a community. The Thunderbolts is a community of musician, which is the band that I have. I have the live band that I try to keep going, and keeping a live band together is one thing than keeping just like an ensemble that gets together to record. That's a whole different thing. You know, like talking about maybe Steely Dan. Okay, Steely Dan was always those two guys who wrote the stuff, arranged it, figured out what they wanted. Okay, so it was like a duo. It was a duo that was extended into a larger organization, and they brought in different people. There were people that are more regulars to it. They didn't tour after their first few years of being together. They started to be successful in the studio, and that was their shtick. I mean, not shtick. That was their bread and butter, was how great they were in the studio, and the recordings that they came up with. So you had, you know, that kind of an organization where it's an extended family almost of musician. That's kind of what Thunderbolts is on a lesser level, you know. But I have, you know, a lot of friends, some musician friends, and people that have been involved over the how long has it been? So about 25 years it's been that I've had the Thunderbolts going. From when I had the seed of it, and we put together the band, the four-piece band in Chicago, and we changed some members and whatever. And then when I recorded the album, I brought in a lot of old friends and people that contributed. Came to Texas here, different people got involved. So it's an extended, you know, family. Lots of family members don't even know each other. So it gets to that point too. So, but you have to, I'm building a community of musicians that are working together and even though they're working apart, if that makes any sense. Um, and along the way, as you're doing some of these communities, we had the Ham here in Houston, Houston Association of Acoustic Musicians here, and I think a lot of people that were involved with that took some leadership and went for certain events or say, hey, I can do this over here. I can arrange that we can meet over here. We can do a little song circle or do things, and our other different small communities here in Houston and still in Chicago too. Those are the two communities I know most of, and then I'm spending a lot of time in Indianapolis. I'm noticing that there's these communities around either open mics or that. You know, and that happens in theater. That happens, you know, in poetry. Poets get together, uh, comics, and that whole thing. So there is power in community, um, and there's power in leadership. But you're not a leader unless you have community. Does that make sense? Is that if you have nothing to lead, or if you're leading something that really isn't a community, isn't a group, isn't, whatever, however you want to define your people, that group of people together. Um, okay, you have to have it, bring it together. Maybe that's your job as a leader, is to keep it together, bring it together, keep it together, so it can evolve into the next manifestation of it. Okay, here's the next one: is do as I say, not as I do, which goes more to the point of the title of this, is lead by example. Okay, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, sometimes you have to understand that that might be the best way to get things done, but usually it's not. Okay, I would argue that great leaders are the opposite of that. Do as I do, do as I've done, Okay, so you have this confidence, you have the understanding that that's where I came from. This is evolved to this. And so I've gotten to this point because I've lived this. I've seen where that this is succeed it has succeeded. Doesn't mean that I never failed, but it means that I have understood where my failings were and I learned from them and brought myself to this point. So the great leaders are the ones who understand that it's important that I set an example. Excuse me. Set an example. So great leaders are the opposite of do as I say, not as I do. And do as I say, not as do is, I would argue, also is typical in our society. Um, how many people are out there preaching? I'm not just talking religious preaching. I mean, just preaching philosophy and politics and whatever else, and saying that, yeah, this is what everybody should be doing. This is what y'all should be doing, and then they're doing something else. I'm sure in everybody's mind out there, you can think of examples in our social and political world, socio-political environment that happens often. And just think about it. I don't want to get too deep into that, but it's a typical of our society to have people spouting out, pontificating. I like to use that word, and saying things. Like, there you go. But you find out it's kind of like, well, all right. But have you had success with that? Is that something that you can say that you are actually practicing exactly what you're preaching? So we'll leave that there. Um, Artistic movements. We'll go directly into just be specifically talking about artistic movements and the leadership within that and the followers. Okay, so if you're a follower, I would say don't follow the norm. If you're in an artistic movement, um, sure you want to learn from other people. We've talked about that in other podcasts and imitation, and this is the way you kind of learn to you learn how to you study Van Gogh, you study Renoir, you study Lennon and McCartney or whatever, and what they're. But I don't want to hear any more Lennon and McCartney songs written by somebody who's copying. There've been a few through the years, and you could tell some influence on some people, but there are some people kind of seem to be forcing. I don't want to say direct, just from Lennon McCartney to be go down on them because those are great songs. But in general, you can hear like following the lead, and it happens in popular music all the time. It happened before, still happen, and it's natural. People like a certain sound, so they want to kind of emulate it and keep going with that. Chuck Berry, for 30 years, there's a whole movement of people that were just Chuck Berry disciples, whether they knew it or not. It's basic rock and roll. You bring it in, but what are you going to do to creatively move that into the next manifestation? Use that word again. Uh, so it gets to the next level of within that school. If you're in that school, if you're in that movement, so you don't want to follow the norm. You want to maybe take what has come about from that movement so far, and you got to step it up. You got to don't fall in. If you fall in, that's fine. That, and then you can always get some gigs and all that or whatever you can fit in. You could be the actor that is in the classics and whatever and standards or whatever. But what are we going to do to move the art ahead? Because art's all about creating, right? I mean, if I think most people would agree with me on that. So we have to be creative within that structure. So I mean, as a follower, you don't follow the norm, and that's how you learn to get leadership. Then all of a sudden, you got some things going and say, yeah, I've got a direction, I've got a focus, I've got something. I'm moving ahead. I'm going to take leadership. I'm going to move ahead with my art as I move ahead. Okay, be true to yourself and evolve. So that could be opposite. It's again like be true to yourself, be strong, be one way. That doesn't mean be one way. Be true, because what yourself as an artist is somebody who creates, that moves, is fluid, isn't real staunch about. You know what you want, but what you want is going to be different. So you move ahead, move ahead, and that keep forward, keep thinking forward. It's one of the worst things you could do as an artist is look back too much. Okay, say, oh, I did this. I use anecdotes and things like that, but I'm not looking too far back ahead. Well, I did that, so I'm going to do. Man, that one was more successful. I'm going to do something that sounds just like that. All right. I mean, I haven't had a lot of huge successes, but I've had some things that got some notoriety and so. But I'm not going to go back and say, well, I'm going to write something exactly like that and just maybe twist it a little bit. No, I'm going to be. I'm creative. I'm doing different things, and that's the reason I was able to do that back then was because it was something different at the time. It was something unique or something. I took an idea, went with it. It hit the common chord enough to get some recognition and that. So once you have some of these minor successes, you know, build on them, or whatever, or something. You win, like I said, awards. I'm not into the awards thing, even though I got my thing here. But anyway, so that's not what it's all about. It's not winning the next award. It's about creating something that really is unique and moves you ahead as an artist. So don't follow the norm. Be true to yourself and evolve, and take leadership over your art. Take leadership over your art. So we bring that leadership into your realm as the say, if you're just an individual artist, you're a songwriter, you're a painter, playwright, whatever, and you have that project in yourself. You say, you understand, you bring in, you say, okay, yeah, now it's time to bring this influence in. This time, I'm going to work. This is when I'm going to start working on the guitar part. Right now, I've got a good line now, melody. I've got all this going. I've got the guitar basic, but now I'm going to hone out that part that I really need to support this. So you start to, really take leadership, meaning understand what each part is. And like I said before, if you don't feel comfortable that you're able to achieve what you're looking for in your art, collaborate, bring somebody else in, you know, and that'll move ahead to that's moving a little bit further here, but I'll get to that in a second when we talk about education. Um, so welcome the muse. So take leadership over your welcome the muse. We talked about the muse, that those spirits or whatever that write our songs for us, that paint our paintings. Uh, the muse, and the opinions. So welcome the muse, welcome the opinions of those you trust. Alluding back to what I said before, is sometimes you bring people in that you trust, and have them be a sounding board, ask them questions, do things like that for and I think even as somebody that's been writing songs as long as me, I've got a song here. I'm going to take it out to the open mic tomorrow and throw it out there. It's a little different, but it's kind of basic but different, and enough to make me think, well, okay, I want to make sure, I want to put it in front of an audience, see how it kind of reacts. And I got a couple people that usually show up there. I could bounce up, say, hey, what do you think of that new one? I mean, real, I'll always tell people, it says, hey, what is your actual opinion, about this. So when I write a new song, I try to get people's take on it. And and I appreciate it. They might say something that kind of resonates. Say, yeah, okay, that's a good way to maybe change it up a little bit. Just an idea, and say, yeah, that's exciting. It's like, okay, excitement. So maybe I'll think about creating more dynamics to enhance that excitement, that this feeling. So to trust the people that you trust, get opinions, and welcome that muse, those ideas that come from anywhere. Okay, just you have to open up a little bit. Okay, trust yourself, and take leadership in those means. But in the end, gain confidence through self-reflection, and that's the residual message of that. So you want to get to a point to where you feel that I'm doing well in my art. This is where it needs to be. This song is definitely representative of my focus and where I'm going with my art. Um, it doesn't, like I said, doesn't have to be just one direction. Yeah, I got that, and now I'm going to go this the way. Now the next thing I'm doing is going that way. So I have confidence enough to say I can do that. I can go this way. I can go that way, and feel that it fits within the umbrella of where my artistic value is in the community, in the larger community. Um, so find your path through cooperation and education, bringing education in here too. Especially when you're just getting going and you got ideas, you got the little song, you got you got a lot of angst. You're young person. Even as you get older, you get angst. So but like I said, cooperate with other people. Do some co-writing maybe, or like I said, get together in a community and discuss discuss the poetry or whatever your art is, and cooperate. And education. Now there's formal education and there's informal education, and you could kind of figure that. Okay, am I going to classes? Am I taking lessons? That something a little more formally. And then the informal education is just keeping. I believe that it's just keeping your mind open and keeping the channels open to responses around you, to all the feedback, not just from people, from just the smells and the picture, the views, and just the breath. You want to keep breathing as an artist. Keep breathing in a subjective sense, where you kind of you keep rolling, you keep going, and that's education in itself, to understand. You get to be more of a zen kind of an approach to it, but which I'm not I'm not an expert on that kind of stuff, but there's meditation can help. Get to be okay. The life is, some artists will. I mean, life gets real. You got pressure, stress, and all that. Sometimes the best thing is just to sit back and just relax. A few moments of silence. I heard a dog barking outside. I don't know if that's going through. There's some dog getting freaking out. Um, just sometimes you need to get into that relaxed state and kind of clear your mind a little bit more, and then let stuff back in. Let that muse come back in, and let the reverberations of the world. Um, Anyway, so formal, informal education. I need to wrap this up, but I want to appreciate everybody for hanging in here with this thing. Hopefully, you're getting something out of it. This will be my last Sunday live thing. When I get back from, I'm going to be taking off in about a week and a half. I'm not going to do another broadcast until I get back, which would be mid-October sometime, maybe the third week of October. I'll get back into it, and I'm going to choose a different day to do it. I think it might be better to work. So I'm going to think about that as we go. But anyway, the wrap up, the best way to contribute to an artist community is to keep creative and keep listening. Now, from my perspective, keep listening and listening as a visual artist. Think of that as more of a figurative. You know, keep getting, responding, listening to the environment around you. You know, if you paint landscapes, you you take it in with your eyes, with your smell, with all your senses, and understand what emotion you want to put into it, what emotion you want to put into it, what story do you want to tell, what message do you want to send um, with it. So that you bring in, you just keep listening, keep open, keep creative, keep forward, keep creative, take in, put out, all right, and like this. So that breath, breathe it in, let it out. Let those creative juices out, and keep listening. A good speaker is a good listener. And reinforce that listening part. So a good speaker, speaking figuratively, whatever, the poetry, the song, the painting, the play that you're writing, whatever it is that you want to put that out there. That become the best stuff comes from you being a good listener, taking stuff in, opening up and listening. So that's about it for tonight. Folk you Zeus. Okay, still trying to get this the regular thing going. But you can always, if you made it this far, thank you very much for hanging in there. You can always watch the old live version. These are all archived. They're going to be under the live tab. So if you haven't, if you're just picking up on this and you're listening to this and you want to check out more, just go to that live tab at Folk Use Zeus on YouTube. And I appreciate you all. And I will be back in October, mid-October, with another discussion from Folk Use Zeus. See you later.